Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. It is Tuesday, April 23rd at 7 p.m. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Rusato?
Here.
Atack? Stark?
Here.
Chansett?
Here.
Wolf?
Here.
Salvati?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
O'Brien?
Here.
Callahan?
Here.
Meitzler? Millay? Ewer?
Here.
Cerrone?
Here.
And McFadden?
Here.
Okay, we do have the necessary quorum to conduct the city business for this evening. Next item is the reminder for everyone to please use the microphone so we get a good recording of what we do here tonight for our city business. And anyone that wishes to address us tonight, when you want to do so, if you want to do so, you need to come up to the podium, use the microphone so we can get you on TV and record it as well. And I want to make a mention here, since this is my last meeting, and I guess I can say what I want to say, that this item has been put on the agenda at the request of just one citizen of City of Batavia. Charlie Corey, who's sitting in the audience here tonight, has come. This is going to be an interesting meeting. Has come down to this meeting numerous times and to the council meeting also as well, and has raised the issue that he sits at home and he wants to listen to these council meetings and committee meetings, but he can't hear us because we don't use the microphone properly. So he's raised that he's raised that issue quite a few times. He's come down, he's talked to Laura, and he's talked to the mayor, and he's asked if it could be put on the agenda. So something as small as this, but yet as large as this, has been changed in the city by just one resident. So, moving on to item 3, which is items removed, added, or changed. Laura, do we have anything?
No.
Okay, moving on to item 4, matters from the public for items that are not on the agenda. So if anybody in the audience wants to address us for an item that is not on the agenda, you need to come up to the podium. And Gene, you don't get to talk. Charlie, come on up to the podium, please. You get about 30 seconds, Charlie. That's all.
We had a 3-minute time.
Well, I think Dave has already introduced me, but my name's Charlie Corey, 1311 Town Avenue. Dave, I just want to ask you one question. Seeing that I won't be able to come by and visit with you with the garage door open in order to discuss things that we need to talk about for city business, I want to know if you have instructed Keenan to open his garage door so when I drive by his home, I'll know it's time for me to stop by and discuss matters with him.
Well, I can answer that question, Charlie, because it is a very small community and we all talk. So I know that you've already been over to Keenan's house and his garage door was not open. You rang his doorbell.
I did, and he had to fight off 3 screaming kids. But anyhow, it's been good. I enjoy it, and I'm still going to stop by the house when the garage door is open, even if I have to work with Marge to do landscaping work. Okay?
And you and I will walk over to Keenan's house and we'll have a conversation with him.
There you go. I'm with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, then we're going to move on to the consent agenda. 3 items in the consent agenda: ordinance 19-30, annexation of 211 and 221 Ellen Lane and 1126 Main Street. It's a voluntary annexation. Item B is ordinance 19-31, annexing 501 and 502 Ellen Lane and 427 Roberts Lane. Those are voluntary annexations as well. And then item C is resolution 19-060-R, authorization to execute a 1-year renewable contract for the mosquito abatement program with Clark Environmental, Mosquito Management Incorporated, in the amount of $52,000. We all got memos on these. Anybody have any comments or questions on these? Hearing none, I take a motion to send it to City Council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Chanzik, second by Ewer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Item number 6, ordinance 19-32, amending a planned development overlay district granted by ordinance 17-61 for the water tower crossing. Habitat for Humanity of Northern Fox Valley is the applicant. Alderman Stark, you going to take this?
I will, thank you. So as everyone on the council knows, this is the site of the former water tower near the high school not the one with the bulldog, but the other one that is no longer there. And it had been sold to a developer initially. His plans fell through, and so now it was purchased by Habitat for Humanity. So in order for this to become developed, we have to first do a planned development overlay district and amend it. And it was originally written in Ordinance 1761, so we need to amend that planned development overlay. And then we need to also approve Resolution 19055R, which approves the preliminary final plat for the Water Tower Crossing subdivision. Short version, this has gone before Plan Commission. Plan Commission reviewed it and had two residents talk. One was concerned about density, the other was concerned about site drainage. Habitat for Humanity spoke to about the property. It would include basements for all four homes, and drainage should not be concerned. There is an engineering review that was conducted by staff, and it needs final approval before construction commences. So the Plan Commission was supportive of the proposal and recognized the reputation and mission of Habitat as a charitable organization. And so for us, our pros are we can approve this and allow for development of the 4-lot subdivision. It would reduce the approved density for the site and restore each lot on the tax rolls when Habitat sells the complete home. Approval would create 4 new affordable housing units in the community developed by a reputable organization. For cons, not approving the resolution and ordinances would likely extinguish Habitat for Humanity's project and result in sale of the property or consideration of a new development proposal. The existing 6-unit approval would remain the effective approval for the property. There's no budget impact on this other than to restore it to the tax rolls, which is a positive. And staff impact, there's additional staff time for the development build out in terms of inspections and things like that. So back to why we're amending the plan development overlay. It was originally set up for 6 units. Now it will be less than that. So that's why we have to do this amendment to it. And there are representatives from Habitat for Humanity here tonight if they'd like to come up and talk about the project or if anyone has any questions. Anyone have any questions for them?
And it's not necessary that you come up and talk about it, but if you'd
No.
like to, it's free publicity, so you could.
Yeah.
I appreciate you folks considering our appeal.
If you could give your name
Oh, I'm sorry.
for the record, please.
Jerry Petrillo. I'm a staff member at Habitat for Humanity of Northern Fox Valley, which is located on 56 South Grove in Elgin, Illinois. I'm basically here to answer any questions. We want to be a resident and a good community member in the city of Batavia. We haven't done anything in here before, so this is our initial influx into it. So we promise to do everything we can to be good neighbors, and our residents will be, I'm sure, fine citizens for the city of Batavia. Other than that, if you have any questions, I did have a short presentation to the Planning Commission, but if you didn't want to see that, it's basically up to you.
I think we're good.
Now, that's how soon do you anticipate starting?
We'd like to start this fall, depending on how long it takes to get the actual permits. We want to do 2 houses this year and 2 houses next year, so that we would complete the 4 project by next year.
Great. Anyone have any questions? Dave?
You and I both represent that area, and I know in the past we've had a couple, 3 different other proposals for developments there, and there were some concerns by the residents that contacted both of us. I haven't heard anything from anybody on this one.
I haven't heard it.
And I think it's very well received by the residents, so I don't see any issues with it.
Helen?
That was going to be the one thing I was going to say is I think this is one of the first times I ever remember being on city council and approving a lower density project for a piece of property than what was originally proposed.
Anyone else? Mike?
Who does the construction?
We supervise the construction, and of course, as you probably have known, our President Carter is pretty well involved. He's not the originator and the starter or the initiator of Habitat, but he's a well-known construction. In fact, I do have Mr. Didier who's here that represents a community development group that has been helping with us build houses over the last few years. He represents several churches in the area that provide to volunteers. We do provide, licensed electrical, plumbing, mechanical contractors, but most everything else is done with volunteers. And a lot of church groups will be welcomed to help us build these 4 houses.
I think it's an excellent idea. I just kind of curious who oversees it all to make sure
But we
it's
do have
done
permanent staff.
correctly and safely.
We do have permanent staff, 1 supervisor per house that basically follows the project all the way through to construction. So he's a professional. He's on a full-time staff of our organization, but he supervises the volunteers and the actual construction people.
Thank you.
Anyone else? 2 of our former alderwomen volunteer with Habitat. There's a group of women from Batavia that volunteer for Habitat and have helped construct a house once a year for the last several years. So it's exciting. And we're welcome to our community as soon as we get this passed.
Glad to be here. Hopefully.
So I make a motion, we recommend a council ordinance 19-32, amending a planned development overlay district established by ordinance 1761.
Second.
Motion by Stark, second by Callahan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Regular agenda.
We should probably talk about it.
Yep. Okay, item number 7, Resolution 19-055, approving a preliminary and a final plat of subdivision for the Water Tower Crossing. Again, the applicant is Habitat for Humanity of Northern Fox Valley. Alderman Stark.
So this goes along with that planned overlay, and this is actually the preliminary final plat for the subdivision, which now is 4 lots. So I move that we recommend a council resolution 19-055-R approving the preliminary final plat for Water Tower Crossing subdivision.
Second.
Motion by Stark, second by McFadden. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion also carries.
Okay, regular agenda. Item number 8, ordinance 19-23, annexing 3 South 102 Wagner Road. This is continued from a previous council meeting. Alderman Stark.
Got it. So this is part of a discussion we had at another meeting where 3 different properties were being annexed into the city of Batavia. And Scott, are you up there? Oh, I
I'm
guess
here.
you're right behind the pole.
Podium's kind of
So
offset.
if you would like to talk about this, this is again back to those unincorporated islands and donut holes that Scott has been working to close in the city limits.
And if you recall, this is one of the ones that we had on a prior committee and city council agenda, and the property owner came and talked about it, and they had some concerns. We did talk to them about their concerns and clarified some of the burning regulations and some of the things that, we are not requiring property owners to do at this point regarding connecting utilities and things like that. He still expressed some concerns about it, but I think he understood that, this is something that is an initiative the city's trying to do, that we can't really make special exceptions for individual properties, and that, that this is something that, he understands is going to happen. So, he wasn't able to be here tonight, he indicated to me, so, but we clarified that. We also said that we would work with him. If he says he wants to continue to make improvements on the property, we indicated that we would work with him as best as we could to make sure that any of his concerns are addressed, and to try and, cooperate with whatever he ends up doing on the property to improve it. One of the things he had mentioned was the brush and burning, and I indicated that we do have a brush collection program, and so, he understood, that would be one of the benefits of being in the city as well. So, we put this back on the agenda for, further discussion and action.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Now, all of these properties on Ellen and Wagner as well as Verdant, did we not annex the other 2?
No, we annexed the other ones. This is the only
Okay.
one we held off on. Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure. And this is the one at 3 South 102 Wagner.
Correct. All the other ones have been annexed already.
Okay, and so all we need to do tonight is approve ordinance or send a council ordinance 1923 annexing 3 South 102 Wagner Road.
Right.
Okay, so I make a motion, does anyone have any, Dan?
Yeah, just for clarity, how did it make it all the way to council and then have the gentleman, sort of complain about it? Was it just miscommunication? I've never seen that happen before.
we sent notice to them, and, I did have a conversation with them before it was put on the agenda also, and then when we do an involuntary annexation, we do actually have to send a legal notice to them saying it's going to be on the agenda and what the date is, it's going to be on the agenda. So typically, those are on the city council dates, and so, if they're looking at the agenda, or if they want to know, I'll explain to them what dates it's going to be on, but, the legal notice for the involuntary annexations are typically at the city council meetings.
Okay. So would you characterize it as more of a miscommunication for him not being on board completely? Because now it sounds like he is.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's still happy about the annexation. I won't characterize it that way.
But you did recognize that
Yeah.
his uses are grandfathered anyways, and that is not the purpose of this annexation.
Correct. I mean, he can continue, as long as what he's doing on the property is legal in the county, he can continue to do that, once it's annexed, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. So I make a motion that we recommend to City Council ordinance 19-23 annexing 3 South 102 Wagner Road.
Second.
Motion by Stark, second by Salvati. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries also.
Okay, you want to put that on the regular agenda?
Did we on the other two? I don't think we did. I think we should just put it on the consent.
Okay, you can put it on consent. All right, that goes on consent. Item number 9, ordinance 19-04, proposing establishment of an amended special service area number 61 for the One Washington Place development. Alderman Stark.
Okay, so this is, as most everyone knows, there's a special service area, number 61 for One Washington Place. And so what this ordinance does is it amends it. So the original SSA was $10 per 100 of equalized valuation, and this will change it to $15 of 100 in equalized EAV as the maximum amount levy. And this SSA reflects the change. And then staff is also proposing that the SSA would not terminate when the tax increment financing district is terminated. Rather, the SSA could be terminated once all development cost and reimbursement items have been fully paid. And then the SSA will remain dormant until such a time a levy is necessary, if ever. And so in order to make the changes to this SSA, we need to follow the same procedure as establishing a new SSA. Approving this ordinance will start the process to amend the SSA, including setting a public hearing date of July 15th. If no valid objection is received, which is unlikely since the city owns all the property within the SSA would be established by that date. A deadline to submit an objection petition would be September 13th, 2019. And so the pros of this gives the city the ability, among others, to pay off the redevelopment bonds and other expenses in the event that tax increment revenues are inadequate to make the required bond payments. The SSA would only pay for these bonds or insure if it's not maintained by the building owner, and would be dissolved after the bonds are paid off and all qualified expenses related to the development are reimbursed. The cons, the SSA would potentially make units more expensive to rent if increment is insufficient to pay off the bond payments. In terms of bond budget impact, the cost of establishing the SSA are being paid for by TIF revenues, and any implementation costs for the SSA levy would be assessed through the SSA if necessary. There's no staff impact required unless the SSA is activated. And the timeline for this is we need to follow the timeline that's attached. The public hearing will be on July 15th. And if it's approved, then the deadline for submittal of objections and petitions of recording of the ordinance will be September 13th. And staff does recommend that we establish the SSA number 61 for One Washington Place, subject to a zero levy.
Initially, yes.
Okay. Anyone have any questions of Scott? Okay. I make a motion that we recommend to City Council ordinance 1904 proposing an establishment of an amended special service area number 61 for the One Washington Place development.
Second.
Motion by Stark, second by Ewer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And since there's a public hearing, it has to go on the regular agenda.
Okay, item number 10, ordinance 19-28, amending the text of the zoning code. This is continued from a prior COW meeting. Alderman Stark.
Okay.
Gotta
Jeez.
say how happy I am this is going as fast as
I honestly wish that I could remember when we talked about this before. So I'll just turn it right over to Drew.
Okay. Yeah, I could probably summarize. Essentially, I think at the last committee meeting, staff kind of went through the kind of brief set of the major changes to the text of the zoning code in regards to accessory structures. The one wild card that was discussed at the end of that memo was the concept of whether accessory structures that would be like shipping containers would that, which is something that came up to staff after the Plan Commission public hearing, and we decided to include that in the memo for your discussion since we were effectively looking at those sections of the zoning code. I think at that time, just because of the timing of that evening, the decision was to continue the discussion to tonight. So essentially, there's no changes from what was in the previous memo and ordinance. It's just here for you for your review tonight, and then to have that discussion about whether there should be any sort of limitation on whether basically a shipping container could be used aesthetically as a accessory structure like a garage or shed, or if there should be either some level of imposition limiting that, or the other option would be just to define those as define those within the zoning code and prohibit them for the purposes of an accessory structure.
Anyone have any questions about this? Mark?
Yeah, I guess I have a few questions. What does this and does this not include? I mean, if somebody's putting in, they have a one-car garage and they want to make it a two-car garage, or they want to make it a two-car garage with an apartment, would that then not be allowed because you'd be going over 700 square feet?
Sure. Essentially, anything that's an accessory structure, which would be a shed, a garage, guest quarters, a garage within a secondary dwelling unit, all of those would fall under the definition of an accessory structure, and those would be regulated in terms of size and number on the property. So it would have an effect on those.
Is there a problem we're actually trying to solve?
Essentially, right now, there is not a limitation as to the number or the size of accessory structures on a given property. So staff thought it was probably appropriate to have some sort of baseline requirement for those, especially when with a shed, it doesn't, for the purposes of floor area ratio calculation, which is one of our regulations on how much stuff you can put on a property. Effectively, they're not included if they're under 120 square feet. So you have no limitation on the number, and then you have no limitation on the size. You could have effectively an unlimited number of sheds on a property in theory. So that was the idea, that in terms of having some sort of base regulation of number, that was the basis for that. And then for size, the thought was just that an accessory structure probably should be, in terms of size on a property, should be a little bit, should be secondary to the principal structure. And so the discussion at Plan Commission was essentially is 700 square foot or 1,000 square foot on the larger lots, is that sufficient, or what's the threshold? And the commission, at least at this point, settled for those numbers.
Are we getting a lot of requests to have stuff that would be pushing these limits already, or is it just kind of like, hey, we're trying to avoid something? Because I start thinking of things like granny pods and stuff that somebody might want to have, and that would eliminate that for the vast majority of the city.
I think essentially it was to basically in terms of accessory structures, what we do hear from time to time is when a large accessory structure goes onto a property, and there's concerns from the neighbors about the size, proximity to neighboring properties, things of that sort. And so some of the changes, like the going from for taller accessory structures, changing the ratio of how far it has to be from a property line, from going for every additional 2 feet in height to 1 foot of setback, to going to a 1-to-1. That kind of helps move those accessory structures away from, or taller accessory structures away from the neighboring residences. So that was some of the thought behind some of those changes. But overall, the idea was to basically kind of set some standards for accessory structures in terms of, so that there's in terms of their height and size, that there's some regulation in place in the code.
So there's not really an existing problem that you guys are running into that we're having. I only saw that there was one mention of it in the plan commission, that there was, if somebody's, like you said, is, oh, hey, I'm putting up a 2-story garage so I can have an apartment for my kids or whatever it ends up being. There's not really like this outcry that this is a problem that we're trying to solve.
We have had a number of large structures being built, so I mean, whether we've had complaints about it or not, we had some complain about it, but it's not been, we won't call it an outcry, but I mean, it has been one of those things where we look at it as, does it make sense to have the accessory structure be larger than the principal structure? It seems to be a little bit off from
Yeah, I mean,
what we would maybe want to have.
yeah, I guess that I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with. I guess I just have a problem, even if somebody had a 5-acre lot and they want to put a 1,200 square foot granny pod, that's a pretty big granny pod, but it'd be a 1,200 square foot unit for their parents to live on, and they can't do it. I think we're creating a lot of limitations if we do this, if we're not necessarily having a problem right now.
Well, I think so that anyone can come before the Plan Commission for a variance. And so I think, but, in my neighborhood where the lots are small, if someone decided to put up a granny pod and a chicken coop and a shed for their lawn tractor in addition to their garage, suddenly there's no green anymore. All you have is little buildings. And so I kind of like the fact that, we're trying to at least regulate it a little. Dan?
I was going to say, in your ward, a friend of a friend told me that they wanted to try one of those shipping containers as a garage. I think it was up near the cemetery or something. I'd never even heard of it before, and I looked at pictures. It looks kind of cool. I mean, there's ways to reuse these things.
There's a shipping container house in St. Charles.
Sure. So, but right now, they would have to approach us to ask permission to do it.
Right now, it would be, essentially it would be allowed, provided they meet the building code in terms of, being fastened to the ground.
So this just gives us a little more authority then?
I'm sorry?
This does give us some more authority then?
Yes, if the council decided to include some regulation as to whether shipping containers would be allowed or not. The staff decided to include that in the memo just as a discussion point because there might be some differences of opinion as to the aesthetics of those.
They're unusual.
Yeah, and rather than have the first one go up and have there be consternation about that, to have the discussion beforehand was kind of our perspective on that.
So Drew, so I guess I'm a little confused. Are you saying what we have in front of us, this ordinance, is permitting shipping containers? If they fall within the parameters?
Right now, what is before you tonight does not change that at all right now. Right now, the zoning code would allow those as an accessory structure. What we included in the memo was just a discussion of whether the city council wanted to see some sort of limitation imposed on those to either prohibit them or to regulate those somehow. Because we were addressing other accessory structures right now, or regulations for accessory structures, we included that as a discussion point, at least.
Well, I don't know. I'll just say this, I guess, that, Batavia is I think we all agree, a desirable place to live. And it's our function here on the council to keep it that, a desirable place to live. Because the residents, all the residents in the city benefit from that. And I just think putting a shipping crate, that's an industrial piece in someone's backyard tends to lessen the desire for a next-door neighbor. I just would, I guess I would just say flatly I'm opposed to shipping containers, Connex boxes. They belong in industrial facilities. And so that's, it might be, new wave or whatever, but I would just have to be strongly opposed to that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, and one item I could just add is that we do regulate what people call pods for temporary storage for 30 days, essentially on a driveway. But this, the concept of putting a shipping container on, in a backyard to serve as a shed or a garage, that was kind of the impetus for that discussion. So,
Dave?
I'm not objecting at all to putting some language in this for the setbacks and so on and so forth, like was originally discussed at the Plan Commission. But then when the idea of the shipping containers came up, I thought, this really needs to go back to Plan Commission. Where it goes from Plan Commission, it might die, I don't know. But that's what they're really good at doing. And we've got a Plan Commission member here in the very front row that I'm sure is looking forward to having this come back to his authority there. But I think that's really where it needs to go. That's what they're there for.
I would have to agree. Marty?
Yeah, I agree with Dave because I think that it wasn't addressed and there's so many ways that it could go because as Dan was looking them up, I'm sure you see some of the stuff that's out there is absolutely phenomenal. It is fantastic. And talking about sustainability and reusing and repurposing, there are things that you could do that would make it so that it would fit in and that it's kind of like Uber and all the other places, all the new trends that we're dealing with right now. Because also think about if I had a oil tank and I wanted to put that out in my front yard, could we do that in town?
You mean and turn it into a cow?
And if I called it Melba and painted it, it would be, so what one person's could see as trash, you dress it up a little bit, you put it through a little bit of designing, and it fits in and it becomes a feature that people like. So
We've had this discussion about what is tacky and what is not.
Yes, we have.
it's in the eye of the beholder.
I would have to agree with Marty and Dave, and I think we should definitely send this back down to Plan Commission for discussion. And, if I encourage everyone to Google the house in St. Charles. I mean, the city council fretted over this a long, long time, and there was a lot of resident input, and so you can see what's happened, in a town just 2 towns away, but it eventually got passed through, and it's being built, so,
Well, we'll see what the Plan Commission says.
yep. Have fun with that, Gene.
So that's the direction, take it back to Plan Commission?
If I may, do you,
You want to approve what's here?
Susan, you still got
Yes,
some comments?
yes.
do you want to proceed with this and then have that separate issue addressed separately from the Plan Commission? Because we can pass a separate ordinance for that particular issue and just.
You mean the
pass this.
setbacks and the number of accessory sheds?
Well, I
Those-
think if we're talking about the containers. as-
Yes, no, I mean, take.
Yeah, take all this,
yes,
take this
take-
forward,
yeah.
and then address that as a separate matter.
Thoughts? Anybody? Nick, I think you had your hand up.
No, I heard Scott.
Oh, okay.
I was just getting attention for him.
So does that make sense to everyone that we should pass ordinance or move ordinance 1928 excluding the shipping container discussion on to city council? So everybody's good with the setbacks, the number of accessory sheds, all of that part of it? No other modifications to that? Okay. Then I recommend we send to city council ordinance 19-28 amending the text of the zoning code, City of Batavia applicant.
Second.
Motion by Stark, second by Rosato. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so that has to go on the regular agenda?
Yes, it does. So we can all talk about it.
All right, item 11, resolution 19-57-R, authorizing execution of the amendment number 4 to the master service agreement for G4S Secure Integration LLC of Willowbrook. Alderman Wolf.
Okay. This is a master services agreement to go for G4S for work that they'll be doing basically on a confidential basis for the city for security in multiple buildings within the city. Did I hit that right, Gary?
That's the second one. So the first one, though, is the name change. 1957.
And I have the wrong one open. And amendment 4 to the MSA. Okay. Give me 1 second.
Second?
Wow.
Or give you 1 second?
Yes, give me
Okay.
1 second. Okay. The city and G4S Secure Integration have a master services agreement since 2012, and now they have a name change. It's right here. And that's really all we're doing in the MSA?
That's really all we're doing. The master services agreement, all the terms and conditions remain the same. This just addresses a corporate name change. This is actually the second time G4S has changed their name under this MSA.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? And I'll make the motion that we recommend to council resolution 19-57-R.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by McFadden. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Consent agenda.
Yes, sir.
Item 12, Resolution 19-58-R, authorizing the execution of task order number 2 with G4S Secure Integration LLC of Willowbrook for an amount not to exceed $40,874.78. Alderman Wolf.
This is for the aforementioned upgrades to the city's security infrastructure. Anybody have any questions? We're not going to list out where the cameras are, how many of them there are, what's the changes. That's for us to know.
So this will exceed 20,000, which is why we're bringing it to you. Some of these improvements were budgeted. We are moving forward with some improvements to the fire station, which were not budgeted. And if at the end of the year, this particular line item needs or goes over, we will have to come back to you with a budget amendment, which is our normal procedure, so.
Any questions, comments? Okay, I'll make the motion that we send a City Council Resolution 19-58-R authorizing execution of task order number 2 with G4S Secure Integration LLC, Willowbrook, Illinois.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Wolf, second by Stark. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Consent agenda.
Does that have to go on?
No, it can go on consent.
Consent, okay.
Yep.
Leave it on consent.
Item number 13, project status. Laura, City Administrator.
Yes, so a few things. The 2018 water report is available, and you can find that both on the city website and Facebook. The curbside brush collection program is beginning in May, the east side on the week of May 13th, and the west side the week of May 20th. The construction project to put a signalized intersection in at Deer Path in Maine, that roadway construction project is underway. Yesterday, I was going to say this past Monday, that was yesterday, right? We conducted an orientation for our 3 newest aldermen. They met with many of our department heads and saw our facilities. And the sidewalk program is underway. If anybody would like to see which sidewalks are part of that program this year, at the bottom of our homepage, there is a link that says City Maps, and all of our capital improvement projects are there and in a map, and you can click and find the sidewalk program. So one of our strategic action plan items was process improvement as well as quality of service improvement. And to that end, one of the things that we wanted to accomplish was to conduct customer service training. So the city has scheduled several training sessions in conjunction with Wabansie Community College in a combination conflict resolution and customer service training that will be conducted for approximately 90 of the city's employees in May and June. We also are drafting a letter to all of the businesses that would be eligible for the newly created Gateway Improvement Program, so that all of those businesses are aware that that program exists, and if they have some projects that they would like to propose, they can get those to us. And then lastly, Anthony and I, next Monday, will be meeting with a representative from Census 2020, and you'll hear us talk about this a lot because it's extremely vital that as many of our citizens fill out that census information. It is the way that we as a local municipality get what we deserve in terms of our federal funding. And so it's really, really vital that we get the word out to people to make sure that they fill out that paperwork. So more on that coming soon. And that's all that I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Anybody have any questions for Laura? No? Okay, item number 14, others. Does anybody have other?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, the chair doesn't recognize you.
Well, as all of us know, we are about to experience some changes on the city council, and it's become somewhat of a tradition amongst the city council that when aldermen retire, we prepare a proclamation in which we reflect upon their service to the community. And this year we have 3 proclamations to prepare, and 2 of them will be delivered at the next regular city council meeting because that's normal when we do it. But tonight, I find that I have to present one of these at this meeting because the alderman who is going to receive it is going to be absent from the next city council meeting. And so I think it's appropriate that I do this at this time because this is a significant proclamation. And what I guess I want to point out here as I read this, there is a very true sense of Batavia history written within this proclamation and speaks to some actions by specifically a family that really have had a very dynamic impact for the positive on the community of Batavia. And obviously I'm talking about Alderman Brown and his family and its service to our community. So I'm going to read this proclamation and then I'm going to ask you for a motion of approval, and then following that I will present it to Alderman Brown. The proclamation reads, whereas Alderman Dave Brown has announced his retirement as a member of the Batavia City Council after a 22-year run of distinguished public service. And whereas Alderman Brown, in addition to his responsibilities representing the citizens of the 7th Ward on the city's southwest side, also served with dedication in the roles of Mayor Pro Tem and Chairman of the City Council's Community Development Committee. And whereas Alderman Brown is the son of former Batavia Mayor Robert V. Brown, who served as a member of the City Council for more than 20 years, including 8 years as mayor from 1969 until 1977. And whereas during the tenure of Mayor Robert Brown, a number of progressive decisions were made, including the purchase of the former Dunbar Capel plant on North Island Avenue for its use as a future city hall and police department, along with the utilization of the surrounding land for development of the River Range Senior Citizen Living Complex, building of the Batavia Riverwalk, construction of the Peg Bond Entertainment Center, a site that was remained for the future development of the Dr. Bernard Sagrand Flag Day Memorial, and the site was also called for the redevelopment of the then Depot Pond and the adjoining site that later was to become the Depot Museum. And whereas under Mayor Brown, a number of other important enhancements to the community were accomplished, including the approval of a 1976 tax referendum, which led to the construction of the East Side Fire Station, the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, and the rebuilding of Wilson Street through downtown Batavia. And whereas with the strong leadership from Alderman Brown during his tenure as a member of the City Council, referendums were approved to rebuild both the East and West Side fire stations, build a totally new bridge over the Fox River on Wilson Street, construct a massive redevelopment of the former Dunbar Capel plant was accomplished with the use for its use as a local government center, plus the adjoining construction of the Batavia Riverwalk, plus a major enhancement of the wastewater treatment plant was also commenced. Along with these improvements came Alderman Brown's very strong interest in the redesign of North River Street and Houston Streets in downtown to provide for a variety of utilizations for civic events. And whereas tonight we honor with the passage of this proclamation 2 generations of commitment by Mayor Robert and Alderman David Brown, who by their actions ensured that Batavia is a town to be admired, studied, and utilized by present and future generations as a place to raise families, grow business opportunities, and enjoy a high quality of life found within a well-planned community with a proud heritage. And approved tonight by a vote of the City Council on April 23rd, 2019. I'd ask for that motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Alderman Brown, on behalf of the City of Batavia and the City Council, congratulations. Thank you for your great service to this community. And certainly you and your dad have left a legacy here that will probably never be topped because of what you did here. And I might note that starting with his father's service, buying this particular piece of property in 1973 proved to be one of the most controversial decisions ever entered into by the City Council. And it took a number of years again, with the leadership of Alderman Brown working with us, we finally got what was originally in 73, the vision to do this, finally accomplished. We ended up passing a referendum after people saw what could be done here. And so the Brown family has been knee-deep in this. And what we have here today is something that the future generations of Batavia will be able to use, enjoy, and appreciate for, I think, for generations yet to be born. And we really have come together in the downtown, the center of the community, and made this place the heart and soul of Batavia for all of us to be citizens together and to live with one another and get to know each other. So the impacts on this are never ending, and this is a legacy of which Dave and his family should be extremely proud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How do I follow that one, Mayor? How do I follow that one? It's been a good run. As all politicians, I guess I got to thank my wife, my family, for putting up with me all these years and putting up with changing anniversary dates and changing birthday dates and rescheduling birthday parties because I've got a meeting to go to. So I have to thank them, obviously, for that. And then, I need to thank the residents of the 7th Ward, obviously, for supporting me. But before I go any further, I need to thank all these people that are here tonight for coming down and enjoying this evening with me and hearing what we've all had to say and what the mayor's had to say, especially. It's very honoring. Then I can't go without recognizing my brother that came all the way back from Florida. He must have jumped on a Learjet because when I talked to him this afternoon, he said he was in Florida. So I don't know how he does it, but I got to thank everybody for coming down. I really appreciate it. And my neighbors are all here tonight and friends that, again, I've had to, leave the house and leave their events that were going on to come to a meeting because that's what I signed up for 22 years ago. As you said, Mayor, there's been a lot that's changed in 22 years. The industrial park has completely turned around from where it was 22 years ago. It's still moving, still filling, and it won't be long and it'll be full. Randall Road, I think when I got on the console, Randall Road was nothing more than Avenue Chevy, Jewel, and Ace Hardware. Everything else was planned, voted on, and approved, and been built since then. And thanks to you instilling in us that we need to really protect Randall Road's retail value, that is what helps us keep the tax base down to where it is, where we're either the lowest or the second to the lowest city tax base in the area. And that's mostly because of what we've done with Randall Road. So that's been a great thing to be a part of. When we approved Walmart and Sam's Club, Linnea Miller was on the console, and she was our lighting expert. She was always so very concerned about what kind of lighting was used and the pollution of the lighting. And so we really got into in-depth conversations about all these developments, which has given us the town that we have. It's kept the taxes down and it's given us the quality of life that we have. So I'm happy to have been a part of that. Again, the residential developments, everything basically west of Randall Road wasn't there when I got on. The Cambridge subdivision, the Tanglewood subdivision, I think maybe the townhouse development right behind the Target was there. I'm not sure, but maybe that was. But everything west of Randall Road was developed during my tenure. A lot of the east side was developed. I made a few notes because I knew I would forget anything I wanted to say, and I'm glad I did. The downtown, as you mentioned, River Street, Houston Street, the framework plan for the streetscape. There was 5 neighborhoods planned during that planning event that took over a year, I think, Mike, didn't it? Mike O'Brien and Don Tenuta, who was Drew McFadden's predecessor. The 3 of us really kind of spearheaded that, and then with the help of the mayor and the rest of the city council, we got it done. And that was a fun time to be a part of that framework plan. There were a lot of people from the community, a lot of staff members, a lot of engineers, all involved in what we wanted to do. And we took some beatings for it. We've been threatened to be hung up by the arch over there. But the arch is there and River Street is there, and I can't tell you how proud I am of River Street and what we've done with the downtown. Obviously, we've all gone through the back and forth on the Walgreens redevelopment area and some of the other things. You know, I'm sad to say I've been a part of some of the demolition, like the Batavia Bowl and the Shumway Foundry area. It's sad to say that, you know, we had to allow to happen what we had to allow to happen. But hopefully someday, this city council or a future city council and these department heads and staff will all be a part of making that area thrive like the other parts of town. And what we're seeing happen with the Shodine development over there, it takes time. It takes a long time. And, you know, people say, why does it take so long? Well, all of us sitting here understand everything that you have to go through between the permitting and the EPA, and there's a lot of paperwork that you have to go through to get some of these things done. And quite often it goes through different city councils. So it's very difficult then to get these things done when you change and bring people up to speed. As the mayor mentioned, that, you know, the infrastructure, I'm proud that I was a part of the infrastructure in town. The wastewater treatment plant, that's a big dollar project. It's about $60 million. That Scott Trotter, our engineer, is consulting engineer, is with us here tonight. That's something that we needed to do for the future, again, to provide for the quality of life in the town that we all want to live in. And, you know, just some of the things, I sat the other night and I was thinking of some of the things I've been a part of. You know, the water treatment facility out on West Fabian Parkway, that wasn't there when I got here. The crosstown water main project, in order to get redundancy, the electric looping, the 138 kV that was brought in over on the east side of town, that we got a red line and a blue line, I think it's right. It's called, right, Gary? A red and a blue line? So we've got redundancy over there. And all these things are things that people elect us to do. They don't know what we do, but this is what we do. And it's been good to be part of it. I'm proud of all that. One of the things that's been recently done is because of the storms that we had, I believe it was in 97 and 2007 were the two big years where we had 96. What's that?
96.
96. Okay. My mind's going, you know. But we had some flooding, and the city council really embraced it and said, you know what, it's just not right that, you know, some areas in our town, they get sewage backing up in their basements, and other places in town, we all pay the same amount of taxes, and we don't get sewage backing up in our basements. So to get that done, it took a long time, but we've been working on it, and the staff's been working on it hard through the direction of the city council, and we're getting all those issues taken care of. The separation of the sanitary and the storm sewer over on the east side is something that many years ago we've known that we've needed to do, but the money just wasn't there. Well, again, with these recent floods and the situations that happened, we all said, you know, we have to find the money and we have to make it happen. So we are making it happen. Boy, I'm losing my place and I can't read my writing so much anymore. But you know, and you know what? I know I'm going to end this with saying that there's been over 47 aldermen, Laura's found out for me, that I've had the pleasure to work with, and I don't believe that includes the 13 that are sitting here. That's 47 plus these 13. So I've had the pleasure of working with over 47 aldermen, gotten to know many of them very well. It's been a pleasure. We don't always agree, but we can always walk out of here and shake our hands. We can always make a little bit of fun of each other, too. I think that's been part of the fun of being with this particular city council, is we can actually make fun of each other, Marty.
There it is.
And it's okay, you know, it's all right. It's all right if I make fun of you, isn't it? But it's been good. And then, of course, working with the different department heads, public works, engineering, finance, great people. Laura Newman, she's the third city administrator that I've had the pleasure of working with. Ron Fletchwhite, Bill McGrath, now Laura Newman. I've only had the pleasure of working with one mayor, thank goodness, and I hope it stays that way for a long time. But I guess lastly, I just want to thank Jenny here, too. She doesn't say much, But she gets it done, and she keeps us on track, and she keeps track of everything we say and everything we do, so it's all there for everybody to look at and see for years to come. So, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I was going to get a motion.
Well, just for old time's sake, even though she's not here, could you ask Lucy to use the microphone one more time?
Yeah, exactly. Lucy, can you please use the mic?
I'll remind, Charlie and I are going to come down here every now and then and remind you guys to use the mic.
I do have one other. Marge Brown asked me to invite everyone to Aquaviva, so I'll make a motion to close the meeting so we can get over to Aquaviva.
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned at 8 o'clock.
Paul and Brown, I have one thing I would like to mention, if that's okay. I need to go to the podium.
You do.
Use the mic, Marge.
You need to give us your name.
Your address, please.
Address
All right, Alderman Brown's wife, 1163 Millview Drive. Between you and Mayor Shelkey, you named all of the things, many of the things that you were a part of since you joined City Council. But your family over here would like to remind everyone here about your very first vote.
Oh.
The night that you were appointed, the day of, one of our neighbors came over.
You're not supposed to tell anybody this.
It's still on TV.
Came over with a little basket full of Dairy Queen dilly bars. And she, for some reason, she just knew that you were going to be the one that was picked that night. It was between you and Scott Burns, perhaps? And so she wasn't bribing you to vote yes on the Dairy Queen issue that night. She just wanted to remind you how nice it would be to have a Dairy Queen right on Wilson Street. So anyway, and you had been not really for the Dairy Queen before this. So I don't know if it was the dilly bars or what, but at that meeting, after you were sworn in, I think they sat down, the very first vote right after that was the Dairy Queen. And so it was approved. They needed 10 votes. There were 9, and that included Mayor Shelkey. And so whoever was going to be appointed that night, if they voted yes, there would be a Dairy Queen. If they voted no, there wouldn't be. So your family wants to thank you for the Dairy Queen.
All right, thank you, everybody, for coming. It sounds like we're going to Aquaviva.
We are.
Party time.
Yeah.